Woke reporter thought their pronouns would earn them special treatment at the White House press briefing. But Karoline Leavitt, the unyielding press secretary, was about to deliver a lesson in reality that would leave the entire room speechless. Karoline Leavitt, the newly appointed press secretary under President Trump's administration, stood at the podium ready to address a room full of journalists. Known for her sharp tongue and unwavering loyalty to the administration's principles, Leavitt had already made a name for herself as a no-nonsense communicator. But on this particular day, a single question from a reporter would ignite a firestorm of controversy that no one saw coming. The briefing began as most do, with journalists raising their hands, eager to press the administration on its latest policies. Leavitt called on the first reporter, a veteran correspondent from a major network. "Good afternoon, Press Secretary Leavitt," the reporter said. "I'd like to start with a question about the administration's recent policy on border security. Can you confirm if the new measures will include additional funding for detention facilities?" Leavitt nodded, her expression calm and composed. "Thank you for your question. The administration is committed to securing our borders and ensuring that our immigration system works for Americans first. Yes, there will be additional funding allocated to detention facilities as part of a broader strategy to manage illegal crossings effectively. We're prioritizing safety, security, and the rule of law." Next question. Hands shot up across the room, but Leavitt's eyes landed on a reporter seated in the third row. The reporter stood, holding a notepad, their voice steady but laced with a hint of frustration. "Press Secretary Leavitt, I'm Alex Harper with the Progressive Chronicle," they began. "I use they/them pronouns. I emailed your office last week with a question about the administration's stance on transgender athletes in school sports. I never received a reply. Can you explain why your team ignored my inquiry?" A murmur rippled through the room. Leavitt's expression didn't change, but her posture stiffened slightly. She leaned forward, her hands gripping the edges of the podium, and locked eyes with Harper. "I'm glad you brought that up, Alex," Leavitt said, her voice steady but firm. "Let me be very clear. This administration has a policy, and I stand by it. We do not respond to emailed questions from reporters who display their pronouns in their email signatures. It's not personal. It's principle." Harper's eyes widened, their face flushing with a mix of shock and indignation. The other journalists in the room exchanged glances, sensing the tension building. Harper took a step forward, their voice rising. "Excuse me," Harper said. "You're saying you ignored my question because I included my pronouns in my email signature? That's absurd. I'm a journalist trying to do my job, and I deserve a response just like anyone else in this room." Leavitt didn't flinch. She stood her ground, her gaze unwavering as she responded. "You're a journalist, Alex, and I respect that you're here asking questions. But let's get to the root of this. When you put your pronouns in your email signature, you're signaling that you deny biological reality. This administration believes in science. Real science. Men are men. Women are women. And we're not going to play along with ideologies that reject that truth. If you can't align with basic facts, how can we trust you to report honestly on anything we say?" The room fell silent for a moment, the weight of Leavitt's words hanging in the air. Harper's jaw tightened, their hands clenching the notepad as they fired back. "That's outrageous," Harper exclaimed. "My pronouns have nothing to do with my ability to report the truth. I'm asking about a policy that affects thousands of young athletes, and you're dismissing me over something as trivial as my email signature. This is discrimination, plain and simple." Leavitt shook her head, a faint smirk tugging at the corner of her mouth. She wasn't backing down. "Discrimination? No, Alex. This is about integrity. You're asking me to engage with someone who openly rejects the fundamental truths this administration stands for. If you can't accept reality on something as basic as biology, how can I trust you to handle complex policy issues without bias? You want to talk about fairness? Let's talk about the female athletes who are losing opportunities because of policies that let biological males compete against them. That's the real injustice." Harper's face turned a deeper shade of red, their voice trembling with frustration. "You're dodging the question. I asked about the administration's stance on transgender athletes, and instead you're attacking me personally. I'm not here to debate biology with you. I'm here to get answers for my readers. Why can't you just respond to my question like a professional?" Leavitt's smirk faded, replaced by a steely determination. She pointed a finger directly at Harper, her voice cutting through the room like a blade. I'll respond to your question when you stop pushing an agenda that undermines reality. You want professionalism? Then act like a professional. Stop hiding behind your pronouns and start asking questions that don't come with an ideological agenda attached. You emailed my office expecting us to bend to your worldview. We won't. If you want answers, drop the pronouns and try again. The room erupted in a low hum of whispers as journalists scribbled furiously in their notebooks. Harper stood frozen for a moment, their eyes darting around the room as if searching for support. Finding none, they squared their shoulders and pushed back harder. "This is unbelievable," Harper said, their voice shaking with anger. "I've been a journalist for 10 years, and I've never been treated like this in a press briefing. You're supposed to represent the American people, all of them, not just the ones who agree with your narrow-minded views. My readers deserve to know what this administration plans to do about transgender athletes, and I'm not leaving until I get an answer." Leavitt's eyes narrowed, her voice dropping to a dangerously calm tone. "Narrow-minded? Let's talk about narrow-minded. You're the one insisting that we all conform to your version of reality, where biology doesn't matter and feelings trump facts. The American people elected President Trump to lead with clarity and strength, not to cater to every woke demand that comes across my desk. You want an answer? Fine. This administration supports policies that protect women's sports. We believe competition should be fair, and that means biological males should not be competing against biological females. That's our stance. But don't think for a second that I'm answering because I owe you anything. I'm answering because I want to set the record straight for everyone else in this room." Harper blinked momentarily, thrown off by Leavitt's direct response, but they quickly regained their composure, their voice rising again. "So you're admitting you ignored my email because of my pronouns? But now you're answering because you're cornered? That's hypocritical. You can't pick and choose who gets to ask questions based on your personal beliefs. This isn't a dictatorship. It's a press briefing." Leavitt's expression hardened, her voice booming with authority. "I'm not cornered, Alex. I'm in control here. And let's get one thing straight. I don't owe you or anyone else a response if I think your question comes from a place of bad faith. You walked into this room with an agenda, and I called you out on it. That's not hypocrisy. That's accountability. You want to talk about dictatorships? Look at the way your side tries to silence anyone who disagrees with you. You label us as bigots. You cancel us. You try to shame us into submission. Well, I've got news for you. I'm not afraid of you, and neither is this administration. We're here to fight for what's right, not what's popular." Harper opened their mouth to respond, but Leavitt wasn't finished. She leaned forward, her voice rising to a crescendo that silenced the entire room. "You want a lesson, Alex? Here it is. Stop expecting the world to bend to your ideology. Stop thinking you can bully people into compliance with your pronouns and your demands. This administration stands for truth, for reality, and for the American people who are tired of being told what to think. So take your pronouns and your agenda and either get on board with reality or get out of the way. Because we're not playing your game." The room fell into a stunned silence. Harper stood there, their face pale, their hands trembling as they clutched their notepad. The other journalists sat frozen, pens hovering over their notebooks, unsure whether to clap or gasp. Leavitt straightened up, smoothing her blazer, and looked out at the room. "Next question," she said calmly, as if nothing had happened. A reporter in the back raised a hesitant hand. Press Secretary Leavitt, I'm with CNN. Can you comment on the recent tariffs imposed on Chinese goods?" Leavitt nodded, her composure fully restored. "Of course. The tariffs are part of a broader strategy to protect American industries and workers from unfair trade practices. We've seen significant job growth in key sectors since the tariffs were implemented, and we'll continue to monitor their impact to ensure they're achieving the desired results." Next, another reporter jumped in, eager to move past the earlier confrontation. "Press Secretary, what's the administration's plan to address the rising cost of healthcare?" Leavitt launched into her response, detailing the administration's efforts to lower prescription drug prices and increase transparency in healthcare costs. But even as she spoke, the tension from her exchange with Harper lingered in the air. Journalists whispered to each other, some shaking their heads, others nodding in approval. Harper remained standing for a moment longer before quietly taking their seat, their face a mixture of defeat and defiance. The briefing continued for another 20 minutes, with Leavitt fielding questions on everything from foreign policy to infrastructure. But the moment that would dominate the news cycle had already happened. Leavitt's fiery takedown of Harper, her unapologetic defense of the administration's stance, and her refusal to back down had left an indelible mark on everyone in the room. As the briefing wrapped up, Leavitt delivered her closing remarks. Thank you all for your questions. This administration remains committed to serving the American people with honesty and strength. We'll see you at the next briefing. With that, she stepped away from the podium, leaving the journalists to process what they had just witnessed. Harper sat in their chair, staring at the floor, while others began packing up their equipment, already drafting headlines in their minds. The confrontation between Leavitt and Harper would be debated for weeks. Some would call it a bold stand for truth. Others, a shocking display of intolerance. But one thing was certain. Karoline Leavitt had made it clear that she and the administration she represented would not be swayed by what they saw as ideological overreach.